How's it going, guys? You're all very welcome to this club leadership webinar series webinar. We're going to look at the guidelines to the LGFA Injury Fund tonight. My name is Niall Ryan. I'm a National Development Officer with the LGFA, and I'm delighted to be joined by Amy Call this evening as well. So Amy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. Anybody who doesn't know who I am, I'm the National Injury Fund Coordinator. Unfortunately, if you do know who I am, you've probably been in contact with me after an injury for yourself or for your club member, which probably isn't always the nicest thing to be dealing with. So tonight we're just going to go through the guidelines of the Injury Fund, what it is, how to apply through it, and where it's there to help. At any stage, if there's any questions, just pop them into the chat. Niall, let me know, or my details are all at the end of the presentation. They're also available on the website, so you can contact me at any stage to query anything or to ask any questions regarding the Injury Fund.
Thanks very much, Amy. And again, guys, as Amy said there, if you're on the webinar this evening, there's a chat function at the bottom of your screen. If you want to ask any questions, you can raise your hand. And there's also a Q&A function as well. I'll be keeping an eye on that while Amy goes through the presentation. If at any stage you find you can't see the screen or your audio is playing up, would advise you to log out of the webinar, log back in, and hopefully that'll rectify it. And also just to let you know, we are recording this webinar this evening, and it'll be uploaded to our YouTube sort of library, so you can take a look back at it as well. Okay, so I'll hand over to you, Amy, and you can get us going.
No bother at all. Okay, so we're just going to get moving on what the Injury Fund is. So to start off, guys, the Injury Fund is not insurance. It's something you'll hear me repeat over and over again. And if you've ever emailed me, I've probably included it in an email at some point. So the Injury Fund isn't insurance. It's a fund set up by the LGFA. All playing members have to pay into it each year. If you're a non-playing member, you can opt in or opt out. And then that money goes into a fund that is there to help members. It's there to help reimburse people who sustain an injury through training or an official match. As we all know, if you play any kind of sport, injuries are just an inherent factor of sport. They're just a risk that we all accept whenever we take part in sport. And for that reason, insurance companies won't look at a fund or a policy. Usually they expect someone to apply themselves. They won't set up a larger policy for associations. So that's where the injury funds come in. The GAA have one, the LGFA have one. It doesn't exist in any other sport, and it doesn't, no other sporting associations have one. So online training sessions, which were quite popular during COVID, aren't covered under the fund simply because we can't regulate for them. There's no way for us for coaches and stuff to ensure that somebody's safety. So all participants in those were doing so at their own risk. We do encourage all members to ensure that they know what they're covered for, either under the Injury Fund itself or through their own personal insurances. We do encourage members to look at that so that they'll know what they want their own cover to have, because they shouldn't rely solely on the Injury Fund itself. All benefits should be reviewed by members, players. Clubs should be really encouraged to send that information out to players, because we got that information all the time where players are saying, oh, I wasn't told what I needed to do to be covered by the fund. And unfortunately, at that point, it's too late to submit a claim outside of the timeline, to look for prior approval. So we do really encourage clubs to send out that message to their members and to their players, what you're covered for and what the process is. And that's what we're going to go through this evening. So as I said, it's not insurance. There's no insurance company. There's no underwriter behind me looking to reimburse players or to assess your claims. It's just me. I assess all the claims that come into the Injury Fund. I set up all the claims, all the notifications come in, and myself and a couple of girls, usually depending on during the year, if I'm on holidays, will be helping out to make sure they're set up on time and their prior approvals are reviewed. I try to encourage clubs and county boards to not refer to it as insurance. Don't put it on your membership forms as insurance, because it does create that misinformation to players that they think there's an insurance company that they can apply to. That is the link to the website for the Injury Fund. All of the details for the Injury Fund are updated on that website. All the forms that are required are available there for download. As I said, anybody has any questions, or if you can't get a download or anything like that, just let me know. and I'd happily send it on to you. So what is covered under the injury fund? So this is usually where a few people get stuck. So the injury fund covers three main areas: your medical expenses, your dental expenses, and loss of wages. They're considered three separate areas. So if you apply for medical expenses, the maximum benefit is €5,500 per claim. Private treatment, so anything outside of physio, GP visits, or public hospitals or A&E visits, needs to be prior approved under the fund. And the simple reason for that is the money that comes into the fund isn't huge. So therefore, we need to make sure that the money is available to people to reimburse them at the end of the year or at the end of their claim. Dental expenses don't require prior approval, but the maximum benefit per claim for dental expenses is €3,000. And then loss of wages applies to any adult members. So anyone who would be paying the higher fee, the maximum benefit there is €200 per week, and it's all adult members are covered for up to 20 weeks per claim. Now, there's three sections or three areas or three stages to claiming under the injury fund even, sorry. So the first area is the notification. The next is where somebody is going for treatment and they require prior approval for that treatment. And then the last stage is where they're submitting the documentation and they're looking to get their expenses reimbursed. So we'll go through each of these stages in detail now. So if you've contacted me, unfortunately, somebody has sustained an injury. Not that we ever want it to happen, but it just does. So if somebody sustains an injury at training, the first three kind of areas they could go to are automatically covered under the fund. So they have their 90% of 6 of their first physio sessions, their GP visits, and then their A&E visits. So that's to ensure the members have reimbursement for getting their initial stages or their emergency treatment. If they're going to a private clinic like VHI or LEA, I know they have loads of those express care clinics up going now at the minute. If they're attending those clinics, their initial visit is considered like they would be attending a private or a public A&E department, and the maximum benefit there is €100. I know the next stage in all those clinics is a follow-up about 2 weeks later. Those follow-up appointments should be prior approved because they're actually attending a private consultation with a consultant in those clinics. So it does need to be prior approved, and that is an area that some people aren't aware of, and that is something I would really encourage clubs to make people aware of. They're going to a private treatment emergency clinic, their follow-ups need to be prior approved, so they should get that claim notified straight away and get that next stage prior approved. How do they notify me of a claim? It's a one-page form, it's on the website, it's called the preliminary claim form. Yes, it does have to be signed by the club and it does have to be signed by the county. However, it can be emailed in to make sure that it comes into me in time, and that allows a little bit of freedom there whenever it's coming in. I know getting things by post can be delayed, and that can extend how long something could take to get into me. So it can be submitted by email, and if there is emergency treatment, get it filled in as soon as possible and send it in to me. Even if you're missing the county secretary signature, send it in to me straight away so we can get it looked at, and we can get in contact with the county secretary together and we can work on that for you. But notification must be in either within 8 weeks or prior to somebody requiring prior approval. So if you're going to a private clinic and you need a follow-up appointment, or you've gone to your physio and they're sending you for an MRI, your claim must be notified because your claim must be opened in order for your prior approval to be considered. So as I said, preliminary claim forms can be accepted by email. Now, a lot of people will ask me that question about the second form, the longer form, the injury claim form. Can it be used for notification? Yes, it can. In situations where you don't require prior approval for any of your treatment, yes, you can send me in your injury claim form. It must only refer to claims where the maximum benefit is the maximum you're claiming back is €200. None of the treatment requires prior approval. So that means it's either physio, A&E, or your attendance at your GP. And it must be in by post within 8 weeks. If you're submitting a full injury claim form to me that's outside of 8 weeks, it won't be accepted and it will be declined. So once I get either, particularly the preliminary claim form, the injury claim form, it'll just be opened and closed in one go. But where we get a preliminary claim form, the claim is opened. And once the claim is opened, we will issue an email to the email address noted on the form. if somebody is submitting a claim form for a juvenile, I would encourage them to check what the email address is. We have had that before where 16, 17-year-olds have put down their own email addresses instead of their parents, and they may not ever check them. So I would really encourage clubs or parents or county secretaries, if you're submitting a claim for a juvenile, please check the email address that is being notified. So on that email that I confirm the claim number, I'll also request the referee's report or the training session attendance record to verify the person's attendance at that official activity. Where we are declining a claim, we will say why. And that's to make sure the players and anybody else who looks it up afterwards will have the full explanation as to why the claim was declined in the first place. So when this is just going through what I was saying about the injury claim form. So where you're submitting an injury claim form, these are the 3 areas where you can do so, or what needs to be in place in order for you to submit your claim for an injury claim form. So the total expense must be less than €200. Treatment must be public, so the physio, the GP, or the A&E. So that does not require prior approval, and all treatment must be finished within 8 weeks, and then all the documentation must be posted in, be received to me within 8 weeks of the date of injury. Somebody asking a question.
There's one question came in there, Amy. I was going to leave it just to the end. Is the COVID questionnaire still necessary and must be completed to ensure claims can be made?
Yeah, so this was a bit of a misnomer really on the attendance records. So attendance records were kind of brought in at the beginning of COVID. It wasn't the COVID questionnaire that was ever required. It was the attendance record to confirm that the person actually attended the training session. So it was never the COVID questionnaire in the first place. So technically, no, the COVID questionnaire isn't necessary. But yes, a training session attendance record is still required to show that the person was actually at the training session where they sustained the injury. So
yeah, I suppose that possibly is 2 separate questions there, as well as, is the COVID questionnaire still necessary, full stop?
Yeah, I actually don't think they're required anymore. I think the health questionnaires have stopped, but I may be wrong on that. That's something that might need to be brought up with D and admin, just to be sure, or with Lynn. But I don't think so is my answer, but I'm not 100%. Don't quote me on that. But I don't think so. I think they stopped last year. So 2 seconds now. We'll get back onto this. There we go. Okay, so the next stage of a claim is where your claim is open and you are proceeding with treatment. So as I said, the 3 things that don't require prior approval are the 6 physio sessions, your GP visits, and your A&E visits, or your public hospital visits. I'll keep repeating those because people still don't get what they're covered for without requiring prior approval. Anything outside of that needs prior approval. So how do you get prior approval? Or what is kind of the things that most commonly come into me that require prior approval? So scans, private x-rays, if you're going to Aphadia for an x-ray or a scan or a CT scan, they all require prior approval. Consultations, so anyone going to a private hospital for a consultation with the surgeon, or a follow-up at a VHI Swicker clinic or a Leia Express Care clinics. I know Aphadia also have express care clinics. Any surgeries, and this includes anyone who has private health insurance where you have an x-ray. It's the private treatment itself that requires the prior approval, not necessarily the expense or the cost. So even though you may have private health insurance, if you have an outlay there that you are looking to have reimbursed by the fund and it relates to a private treatment, it must be prior approved. Additional physiotherapy sessions can also be considered for prior approval. It differs in the way that it differs in what we accept for referral, but I'll just go through that now. So for private treatment, a referral letter is required on headed paper from a doctor or a surgical consultant or a physiotherapist. This must state the treatment that the person is looking for. So if it doesn't state that, if it just says that somebody is going for surgery, I can't accept that. It has to state what the surgery is because it has to relate back to the injury that was notified. Consultations are consultations. They'll just state that they're consultations, so they're usually okay. Once you receive a referral letter, it has to be emailed in to me with your claim number. and the prior approval has to be requested. Where you are requesting physiotherapy, it has to state the number of sessions you're going to require in order for me to approve it. If a letter requesting physiotherapy comes into me saying John is going to be in physio for the next 9 months, I can't state how many physiotherapy sessions, and I can't reserve for 9 months worth of physio. It could be once a week, twice a week, 6 times a week. It needs to state that, you know, he's going to require 4 sessions for the next 6 weeks, or 12 sessions for the next 6 weeks, in order for me to prior approve that. So things that aren't covered under the fund, or that won't be reimbursed by the fund: private treatments that have not been prior approved, and this is really common at the moment. People sending in receipts for consultations or MRIs that haven't been prior approved. Prior approval has been in place for over a decade. All players and all members should be aware of the requirement. The only difference now is that it's accepted by email and it's not required by post. So it is made as easy as it can possibly be for players to send in their private treatment and prior approval requests. Injections aren't covered under the fund. Prescription receipts or till receipts aren't covered under the fund. And the only reason for this is because they don't state who it belongs to, and it doesn't state what they're related to. So we can't verify those particular receipts, so therefore we can't reimburse them. ISO or physiotherapy testing that occurs post-operatively in private hospitals has never been covered under the fund. It was in place where the maximum per session was €60. That has been gotten rid of, but unfortunately we can't extend it towards the ISO testing and physiotherapy testing that occurs in private hospitals. And then any expense which exceeds the maximum benefit. So maximum benefits, as we've gone through, are €5,500 for medical expenses, €3,000 for dental expenses, and €200 per week for 20 weeks for loss of earnings. There is no excess on the LGFA Injury Fund. That's just something we get all the time. But anything beyond the maximum benefit, unfortunately, we just won't be able to extend the benefit to. So I know I have 2 questions there. So if you need an X-ray as part of an A&E visit, or you need surgery at an A&E visit. So if you go into a public hospital, you'll only have one charge. You won't have, so if you go into A&E, you'll get charged your €100, and then you will be seen for your X-ray, or you'll be admitted and your surgery will be done under that €100. You don't get charged extra. We do cover the €80 if you do end up staying overnight in a public hospital. That €80 is included in the A&E public hospital benefit. But that is, but yeah, so you wouldn't have an extra charge for X-ray or for surgery. If you go into A&E and they refer you on for a surgery in a private clinic, you will probably have a consultation first, and then you will probably have to wait at least a week or so for your private hospital surgery, giving you time to get that notification put into me as soon as you can. All right, so I just answered that live, and we have one more in the chat in relation to the attendance record. Yes, so the manager can keep the attendance record. Sometimes the FLO will keep the attendance record. Sometimes it's a team trainer. But I would just encourage everyone to keep a record of who's attending your training sessions, even just for your own records. God forbid, I know COVID is hopefully starting to wind down a bit, but at least then you'll know yourselves as well. But yeah, no, it can be, if it's kept by the manager, when I request it, it can be emailed in by the club. It doesn't necessarily have to be given to the player. So any clubs that are in that situation, by all means, just drop it to an email if you wish, so the player doesn't have everybody's name. That's absolutely no problem. So you've notified the claim, it's been in within 8 weeks. The person is definitely registered. Thank God they've only had their GP visit, or they've only had their they've only had their GP visit, or if they've been unfortunate and they've gone all the way to surgery with their prior approval, they're now looking to submit their expenses. So it's the last stage of the claim. All expenses and all treatment should be completely finished at this point. A player shouldn't be encouraged to send in their injury claim form before they're finished their treatment. Once I issue a payment, I close that claim and no further benefit will be available to a player. So I know a couple of clubs before Christmas got it into their heads that everything had to be in before the end of the year, and they got injury claim forms into me at the end of the year, and I issued payments only for players to come back to me saying, oh, but I'm going for a consultation. they just misunderstood. The injury claim form comes in at the end of the claim once all treatment is completed. It's a slightly longer form. It's on the website. It includes a declaration of what the player is submitting. So that is their declaration of all the expenses they are submitting. So that's the reason why we look for it. And it needs to be signed. It needs to be signed by the club, and it needs to be signed by the county. The original form and original receipts must be submitted by post for reimbursement. We will only issue a payment by check to the player or to their parent. We do not issue any payments to clubs, and we do not issue any payments to county boards. But yeah, once payment is issued, we will then close the claim and no further benefit will be opened. Pretty much it. Loss of wages is one of these areas that sometimes people get bogged down by and they get a bit confused by. Loss of wages is just an extra section on the injury claim form, but it also requires a few extra details. So it requires 4 payslips and a medical cert from the player's doctor. That medical cert needs to be signed at the end of their time off with stating the full period they were unfit to work. So for instance, if say Niall tomorrow went out and hurt himself and got an injury, his doctor might sign a note and say, we expect Niall to be off for the next 2 weeks because of his ankle injury. In 5 days time, Niall, after a couple of physio sessions, says, you know what, I'm actually going to go back to work. I'll go back on Monday. So his doctor's cert has still said 2 weeks, but he may only have actually been off for a week. In that situation, we would have needed an updated letter. So instead of requiring 2, we just request that all players submit 1 letter from their doctor at the end of their time off saying Niall was off from Monday the 1st to Thursday the 5th, from Thursday the 4th of October or of September, or whatever it is, so that we can issue the payment for the full period that they were off, not necessarily the full period they were expected to be off. So I hope that makes a bit more sense to anybody who's in that situation. But yeah, they need to be originals and they need to be posted in with the full injury claim form and any receipts if you're submitting receipts. So what do we do when we get payment? Whenever we're issuing payment, we get all the details and they're compared with what we originally had. All receipts submitted for private treatment are checked against what was actually prior approved, and the dates of the prior approval are marked off against the dates that the receipts are received for. If we require any emails or require any queries or follow-up information, we will email the claimant straight away. Other than that, once everything is in order, payment is usually issued within a week and the claim is then closed and filed. So that's the process. That's what is covered under the fund. Who is covered? All registered members that have opted in or who are required to be part of the fund. So I hope that's nice and clear. I will remind everybody notification must be in within 8 weeks or prior to any treatment that requires prior approval. When in doubt, ask. By all means, send me an email, give me a call. I'm more than happy to explain the process to any players or any club members. If you need me to do this presentation to your county, by all means, I will. I just want to make sure that people are aware of the injury fund and how to benefit from it. Any treatment that hasn't been prior approved can't be reimbursed, and that tends to be where people get stuck, is they go ahead and they get anything done and then they come back afterwards. And unfortunately, that's just not the way the fund can operate. There isn't enough finances there for it to operate in such a way. Anything that's not notified in time, and if it's notified with an injury claim form outside of the 8 weeks, it will be declined. On those situations where it has been declined and no benefit is going to be paid out on receipts, I will return the receipts if it's requested. There's no problem there with that. The website is there for clarification and to give you all the details you need. By all means, give me a call or drop me an email if something isn't clear on the website. So that's pretty much the presentation, which I hope hasn't lasted too long for you guys. We'll just see what the questions are.
Yeah. Do you want me to read them out to you, Shirley, and I'll go through them and you can answer them. And I suppose before we do that, come here, Amy, thank you very much for that presentation. I thought it was excellent. Some great information passed across there as well. We've got our first question in here from it's an anonymous one. It says, for physiotherapy sessions, does it have to be a chartered physiotherapist, or would an athletic physiotherapist or a non-registered physiotherapist still be okay? So
there's 2 ways of looking at this. So under the physiotherapy benefit, I'm looking to have it renamed or recategorized. So the physiotherapy benefit will cover any physical therapies that a player undergoes. So if it's a physical therapist, a physiotherapist who would be a chartered physiotherapist, a chiropodist, any of those kind of not physio but physical therapies. I'm looking to have those all included under that one benefit. So no, it doesn't have to be a chartered physio. It can be an athletic therapist who would be doing it. The receipts must be on headed paper, so they can't be written in a receipt book, which is one thing that tends to cause a bit of bother if it is a non-registered therapist or it isn't a normal physiotherapist. It might be some other kind of therapy. Sometimes they're in normal receipt books and they're just handwritten, and unfortunately we can't accept those receipts. They have to be on business paper receipts. And then the one other thing about that is, where somebody is submitting a physiotherapy letter for referral, it has to be a chartered physiotherapy therapist, because it has to have their registration number noted, and it has to be on business headed paper.
Thanks.
Okay, so
Yep.
I hope that has answered that.
Thank you, Amy. We've one in the chat here. It says, if an injury occurs on a Friday or a Saturday, can a player proceed to private treatment if required, and an email sent to you as you're not in the office over the weekend?
Yeah, so in that situation where a player gets injured on a Friday night or a Saturday, most of the time they'll go to, say, the likes of VHI Swift Care, or they'll go to a public A&E, because most private centres aren't open other than the emergency ones, and they tend not to do surgeries until the Monday. But if it's a case where a player gets injured on a Friday night, if they submit an email to me with the referral letter or with their letter, I'll bring it to management for consideration. There is a rule that says under emergency treatment is covered for private treatment, and there'll be a maximum number of days placed on that, and that is at management's discretion. At the moment, I'm looking to have that put into rule, to set the number of days by rule, so we can give clarity there. But where a player does get injured like that, most times it ends up in a public hospital or a private emergency clinic, and then they usually aren't seen until the Monday or Tuesday by a surgeon or whatever. So although they might not necessarily have time to get all their signatures on their prelim form, they definitely have time to send me an email with the letter that they would get from when they get discharged from their private clinic, to say, you know, Amy has done serious damage to her knee and she needs an MRI. The chance of getting an MRI in 24 hours in this country at the moment is fairly slim, unless you're in a public hospital and going for emergency treatment. So thankfully, well, unfortunately for anybody who's in that situation, because I've been there and I've hated it, but usually it's a Monday or a Tuesday before you're seen, so it tends not to arise. But where there is emergency treatment is covered under rule, and it would be brought to management for consideration.
Thanks very much. We have another one in here. It says, if a player attends the 6 physio sessions, do they just send the receipts to you, or does the injury claim form have to be filled out as well?
No. So if a player attends 6 physiotherapy sessions, it depends on how long the 6 physiotherapy sessions take. So the first stage of that would be where if they have a claim already opened with a prelim form, they still need to submit their injury claim form at the end with those 6 receipts. If they haven't opened a claim and those 6 physiotherapy sessions happen within the first 8 weeks, they need to submit a full injury claim form and the original receipts for reimbursement. So in every claim, a full injury claim form is needed for reimbursement to happen.
Is there a maximum claim amount in sterling?
No, the injury fund is completely in euro. All money in and money out goes out in euro. So there isn't a sterling account for the injury fund. Okay.
Is there a complete list of treatments / surgical procedures which are covered by the injury fund?
There isn't a complete list, more because it would be almost impossible to set out a complete list of what injuries could possibly happen to people. You'd be surprised how varied and how out of this world they can become on occasion. So we don't state the number, we state kind of what the usual areas of treatment are. So your scans, consultations, surgeries, physio or physical treatments, and that's kind of why I want to expand on that physical treatments benefit. But yeah, so they're the main areas. So anything outside of your GPs, public hospital and A&E, or your 6 physio sessions automatically requires prior approval. So if you don't get prior approval and it's outside of those, you can take it that it's not going to be covered by the injury fund. Okay,
thank you very much. That seems to be all our questions, Amy. If anyone has any others, we'll wait a minute or two and we'll see if anyone has any other questions. But apart from that, guys, thanks for listening this evening. Thank you again, Amy, for presenting that for us this evening. And just before we go, guys, just to remind you of our spring series, which again continues with our next webinar will take place for club officers, and it's being a club chairperson, and that is next Wednesday. Again, you can find the details of that on the website. And just to note as well, just when you go here this evening, you will be asked to complete a feedback form, and we'll be very grateful if you could do that for us and let us know how you found tonight's session. We have just a couple of thank yous. So thank you, Amy, again, and thank you everyone else for taking part. And we'll leave it there. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.